Isaiah Evans could be the best returner in college basketball. Let's lock in and find out why.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that bet hits, you can win $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started right away. As always, I'm Albert Gim, and I'm joined by my co-host, PhD in the pick and roll and the pepperoni pizza, Corey Tulaba. Corey, an exciting week, an exciting time. We're getting that much closer to college basketball. Corey, how are you doing? How is life? How are you feeling about college basketball being this close and the NBA being this close?
Yeah, I mean, super excited. Obviously preseason, I don't dive as deep into preseason as some people do. But because we're draft sickos, I have, done some of the team scrimmages, including the Duke blue and white scrimmage that was up on YouTube. So, I'm excited that there's new stuff. Obviously NBL season is underway, so there's meaningful games for the draft happening there with prospects. But man, I'm just getting excited, man. I hate when the weather changes and it starts getting cold in New York. But I do know that means that basketball season is approaching, and that does get me excited.
Weird time, Corey. I know it's been rainy in New York. It's been raining here in Los Angeles as well. Weird week. But as you mentioned, Corey, maybe it's the changing of the seasons, changing of the times. We're getting that much closer to basketball. And as you mentioned, the blue and white scrimmage that you watch, we're talking about a Duke Blue Devil today in Isaiah Evans. And so, Corey, if you can, let's get in the lab. Give us the essentials on Isaiah Evans.
Yeah, so Isaiah Evans, Duke shooting guard / wing, maybe a swing wing, potentially. This is a kid, high pedigree, McDonald's All-American, Nike Hoop Summit, Jordan Classic. He's listed at 6'6", 180 on Duke's site. He'll be 20 and a half years old on draft night. He is currently number 18 on the first unreleased No Ceilings big board, which I believe we'll get another update before we release it to the public, but that's where he's at right now. Some stats in 35 games for Duke. Now you're going to hear these stats and you might go, well, why are we talking about this kid the way that, we are? 6.8 points, 1.1 rebounds, a half assist a game to 0.4 turnovers. So a 1.13 assist to turnover ratio, 0.2 steals, 0.1 blocks. Those numbers don't jump off the screen, right? 43.2, 41.6, 81.3 shooting splits. Okay, things starting to get a little more interesting. 62.1 true shooting, 60.1 effective field goal, 7.2 BPM as a freshman. So that's his kind of statistical breakdown. He played limited minutes as a freshman on that loaded Duke squad with Cooper Flagg, Con Knipple, and whatnot. But it seemed like he had moments last year for Duke, and he was a five-star guy who had a lot of pedigree coming in, and, we got a chance to see up close at the Nike Hoop Summit. And then, I also got to see him at the Jordan Classic, and there's a lot to like. So he's intriguing for a number of reasons that I'm excited to talk about.
Corey, I think everything that you outlined is really important because it's why he decided to go back. There were some discussions about him potentially, going into the draft and staying in the draft, blah, blah, blah. But I think for him, he was like, dude, I'm a five-star guy. I played on an absolutely loaded Duke team with a bunch of returners and other, highly regarded freshmen. Guys like him and Darren Harris didn't really get much of a shot last year. Right. And so he's probably like, you know what? I want to come back. And yeah, we've got some talented freshmen coming in, but this is year 2 for me. And I want to show what I can do. And I think, Corey, the biggest thing is, and we'll get right into the offense now with Isaiah Evans, is I think what we saw from him offensively last year, mostly as like a floor spacer type of guy, microwave scorer, if you will, coming off the bench. I think he's coming into his sophomore season here in Durham wanting to show more, because I do think there is more to his offensive game. And where I wanted to start, Corey, you read the shooting splits, a very, very good shooter, right? And we've
That
already
might be an
talked about
understatement.
we already talked about a good shooter this week in Bennett Sturts, and we've got another one in Isaiah Evans, a guy who is extremely competent shooting off the move, does a great shot. The thing that stuck out to me, Corey, was with his movement shooting, really good about getting his feet organized under him. He gets the puppies organized under him. Something that we've talked to other shooters about. I think John Poulakidis talked a lot about reps, but he also talked about balance, right? Todorovic also told us that, how important that balance is. And looking at Evans a lot of times with his movement shooting, I thought he did a really good job of not only being very smart about his movement, but also finding, once again, organizing his lower half, but also getting that nice balance under him. And I think that's a really good skill.
And quickly.
Quickly, yes, very much so. But also his release is fast too, which makes all of it very, very dangerous for him as a floor spacer. But on top of that, I think there's also some stuff that he could do with the ball in his hands that he's going to want to show more of this season. And so, Corey, what are your thoughts on Isaiah Evans' offensive game overall?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like, getting to see him up close, following him, as a high school, probably whatever. Like, I knew he was a shot maker, I didn't know he was like an all caps shooter necessarily. Like last year, okay, he had a 3-point rate of 81.4, meaning 81.4% of his possessions ended in a 3-point shot. 18.1 threes per 100 possessions. And he shot 43% on that 41.6% on that volume. And the shots were not easy. Like, he is unbothered by defenders and contests. Like, he does not care. I think he might be the most aggressive shooter in the class. Like, I don't know if he's the best, although he certainly has a case for it.
Yeah.
But he's certainly going to be up there as most aggressive shooters and guys that are like legit shooters. Like AJ DeBonza is going to be an aggressive shooter, but he is not in the tier of shooter that Isaiah Evans was. And it's 6'6" long with his versatile shooting profile. Cause like he didn't play on the ball nearly as much as maybe you would expect him to, having watched him at lower levels. Where, I think he, coming into the year, I would have said, he's going to get like, Brandon Ingram comps, not as tall, but like the long rangy ISO scorer who goes to Duke. Whereas now you're looking at his shooting profile. He's running off pin downs and flare screens and floppy actions and this and that. And like elevate, like you put him in any kind of action and he's thriving in it. And again, he's getting shots up. Like his job was, when he gets in, to shoot the ball, to space the floor. And that's what he did, man. He's a tough shot maker. Like you mentioned, I'm super interested to see how many more like on-ball reps he's going to get this year. Because, you still have Caleb Foster there, right, who's going to handle a lot of the ball handling duties, which personally, man, I think that's tough. A tough situation for Duke. I don't think that's in their best interest, but he stayed, he was loyal. He's been in the system. He's going to get that shot. Caden Boozer is going to handle the ball a lot. Cam Boozer is going to handle the ball a lot. Then you have, Adame Sarr who, there's still so many talented guys on this Duke roster that are going to have those ball handling reps that it's like, I don't think we're going to see like a guy who is going from the low usage that he was playing at to all of a sudden leading the team in usage, even with another year of experience and seniority. But I do want to see more of that ISO creation because that's there. Like he's got no problem getting his own looks off, and that's why I think he's a little bit interesting because like with as much of a shooting clinic as he put on last year, like there's still room for him to hit even, make his shooting profile even more versatile. The question then becomes, if he's going to be a guy who is a pure scorer, now how does he leverage that? He didn't have a ton of rim attempts. He had 24 rim attempts last year, which is not a lot. 58.3% he finished on those. 60% in the half court on 15 attempts, like low sample. How much do you make of that? But like now when guys are going to chase over on these screens and overplay him, can he go back door and get some action going to the basket cutting? Can he get that curl and instead of firing a shot, can he continue his momentum and get downhill and go to the rim? Can he beat a guy off the bounce? Can he beat a guy off the bounce using a ball screen? And then what does this look like for his playmaking? Because he had 18 total assists last year to just 16 turnovers. So 7.5% turnover percentage, fantastic. For a purely play finisher guy, when he touches the ball's going up. I want to see how that passing kind of evolves because I don't think he's like inept as a passer.
Yeah.
He's certainly not like advanced. I don't think, but he's not inept. I think like, there's things he needs to get better at, on his drive and kick passes. He wouldn't like generate a paint touch. He would kind of like move off the ball, like before the free throw line. So like, can he get deeper? And part of that will be like, the better he gets as a finisher, the more people will commit, and then he can, spray the ball out. Just how does he leverage the shooting? Both as a scorer and as like a connective passer are like my questions from him, because I know he's going to shoot the cover off the ball. I know he can fill it up. I know he can get hot. I know he can score. What else does his offense look like outside of that?
And Corey, something that I wanted to bring up, you mentioned how Duke still has a lot of ball handlers. They also have a lot of floor spacers.
Yeah.
Jimenez coming in. Darren Harris is going to be a huge name to watch in year 2, along with Isaiah Evans. So even his like floor spacing opportunities may not be, as much as he may have thought, with, those options being there as well. And Jimenez is a really good shooter. Darren Harris, a lights out shooter, right?
Yep.
And so it's going to be really interesting. The one thing I want to say, Corey, with his ISO game, and I don't know if this is like an unfair thing to ask for with him, but I really do believe he has to continue to add mass. And I know it's not easy for those guys that are that skinny, right? I totally understand. I'm not trying to say like, oh, you just got to eat more. I don't want to make it that simple, right? I understand it's a challenge, but I think adding strength would help. I also felt like in terms of his ISO game, I know we didn't see a ton of it in college, but there were some instances. And also if you go back and watch the high school stuff, there's some stuff there. The thing that I didn't love, Corey, was that like he would try to do things with like hesitations and changing pace, but it didn't feel like, what's the best way for me to explain this? He would change pace, but it didn't really feel like he was changing pace. The best example I can give, Corey, is like when they talk about like elite starting pitchers in baseball or pitchers in general, the best pitchers, there's like a big gap between the speed of the fastball and the breaking stuff. Like if he's got a 99 mile per hour fastball and like an 80 mile per hour changeup, like you want that 19 mile per hour gap because it really messes with the timing because there's such a gap in speeds. I felt like his hesitation stuff, he could be better about being more of a gap where you feel more of that hesitation, if that makes sense.
It was like a car that stalls out rather than like slows down and then picks up speed.
Bingo.
So like when he hit a hezi,
yeah,
if he's matching the same speed he just came from instead of like mixing it up. Yeah.
The acceleration after the fact just wasn't there for me, and I think it made him less effective when he used those types of moves. Is the point that I'm trying to make. But overall, Corey, like I think with the shooting profile, and I think there is potential with him on the ball because I think he is a good handler of the ball. And to your point, Corey, there were some nice passing flashes as well. A couple of nice lobs, a couple of nice reads on the second side. So I think there is potential there. But overall, I think that it's going to be really interesting to watch. And I know the cold open today was like, he could be the best returner, blah, blah, blah. And he could be. Like, if all goes well, he could be absolutely electric. But I do think our listeners should know there is a world where it may not work out perfectly either. And it may not turn out to be exactly what he's hoping for. And will then lead to another conversation where people will ask, should he have just gone into the draft? Should he have just, put his name in then, and then who knows? But
what if he shoots 36% this year?
Bingo. But I struggle to believe that because he shoots such a pretty ball. But anyway,
yeah, same. But it's
correct.
It's a short season. There's variance. You never know.
Maybe he hits a slump. Things could happen.
Maybe he jams his pinky and it throws things off. These things happen.
Things can happen, right? I mean, Liam McNeely last year, he didn't really get to show his shooting ability because a lot of different reasons. But anyway, Corey, I think offensively, a lot to love. After the break, we're going to get into his defense where there's some things for us to discuss as well. Guys, the holidays, I can't believe where we're at in the calendar, but the holidays are right around the corner. And before you know it, things are going to be happening. People are going to be in your house, guests, family members, celebrations, all kinds of stuff, right? Maybe your serving ware needs a refresh, or the guest room could use some new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready, from Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every style and budget. And with free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. Guys, it's as we mentioned, it's that time of the year. Thanksgiving comes around. Suddenly, your cousins are in town. Your mom's in town. You've got to host them. You need a room to set them up in. You need new bedding, blah, blah, blah. Having Wayfair there for you to get all of your needs is huge. And so get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Corey, we're back and we're talking about defense, a very important part of the game of basketball. And Isaiah Evans, we're going to be talking about his defense. And I think, Corey, where I want to start, I actually, heading into his film breakdown for me, his deep dive, I was expecting to not like him as a defender. Not exactly sure why. Maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's something I saw at the Nike Summit.
Most of these shooters are like,
well, yeah,
one dimensional, right?
That's a good point. But I also felt like back in somewhere in my brain, there's something I saw at the Nike Hoop Summit that I might not have loved, and maybe that kind of stayed with me all this time. I don't know for sure. I don't want to psychoanalyze myself right now. But on the defensive end of the ball, Corey, I actually left a little bit surprised. I ended up liking more than I thought I would like, is kind of where I'm at right now. And so the first thing that I wanted to lock in on, Corey, was there were a lot of possessions where he showed real fight. It felt like he was bought in to what Duke was trying to do defensively. And the thing that I wanted to give him credit for, were there were several possessions from what I watched where, regardless of his lack of physical strength, he kind of overcame that with desire and a competitive spirit, which I really, really liked and was not expecting that to be there. Now, to kind of balance things out, I also think that there were some not so great possessions either mixed in. Maybe there were a couple of possessions where I felt like maybe focus wasn't exactly where it needed to be, blah, blah, blah. But considering the role that he played last season offensively, I almost feel like that kind of tilted things in his favor as a defender at times. And another thing that I wanted to mention, Corey, before I send it over to you, I don't think he's the smoothest lateral mover, but I also didn't hate it. I thought for his size, and he's another guy where, Corey, when we did the Bennett Sturts pod, you mentioned guys that are like high waisted, and I feel like Isaiah's kind of that way too, like very long legs. But regardless of that fact, I thought he moved pretty well. And I walked away writing.
I think he's a pretty smooth lateral mover.
Okay, yeah, I wrote that in my notes where I walked away very happy with his lateral movement compared to what I was expecting. And so my overall energy with him as a defender was I was pleasantly surprised, and I actually liked it a lot more than I was expecting it to. And so, Corey, if you can share with us, share with us some of your thoughts on his defense.
Yeah, well, ironically enough, or not, so whatever. My very first note is very competitive defender. I think this dude plays with so much passion and fire. And I remember I noticed it at the Hoop Summit. They were doing like full court 1v1 drills. And I want to say he was defending, I think it was Dylan Harper, potentially. And, he was just all up in him. He's the kind of guy who is like clapping at you and like really like just, he's like an annoying gnat who's just always like vocally showing you that passion and that fire. And I think that translates to the defensive end. I remember again, like when I saw him at the Jordan Brand Classic, he was just like going at Cooper, like defensively, like just going at him, and or offensively rather too. So like it translates to both ends, but like he's super competitive. I think he gets low and wide. I think he's willing to get in your shirt, and I think that like his ability to move laterally and quickly flip his hips is really great. I think that where he's going to get in trouble, because like the analytics, at least from last year, not super friendly to him from what you want as an NBA wing. Steal percentage of 0.8, block percentage 0.7. Those are like sub NBA level. His defensive rebounding, subpar for an NBA wing. So I think he needs to be more active as like an event creator. Now, I thought he had a really nice read in the passing lanes in the Duke blue-white scrimmage. He blocked a shot on a drive that was really nice in that scrimmage as well. So like it could be like his minutes were so sporadic and limited that like it's just like a variance thing where he just didn't get maybe like 3 or 4 more steals, completely shift what those numbers look like. So that's something I'm going to be looking for is, can he be more disruptive outside of just like doing a good job on the ball? Because I think he's really good on the ball, actually. Like, now, don't get me wrong. He is skinny. I think his nickname is Slim. So he's going to get bullied. It limits his defensive versatility as far as guarding up, because guys are just going to body him, create mismatches, where you get him on a switch and now you got him on the block and you just got to turn your shoulder and dump the ball inside. Sometimes I think he was pretty prone to flyby contests when he had to cover ground. And he didn't think that he can get there with like choppy feet and a high hand. Like he would just like jump and fly by, and now you're playing 5-on-4 advantage basketball and causing scrambles. So like that kind of stuff is stuff that drives coaches crazy. But like, I think that he really fights. He really gives effort. I think he's more than capable of doing it. It's just like you said, like the strength is going to be a major issue. Like strength is a big deal at the next level. He can get away with this at, in the ACC. At the NBA level, you got the strongest, most skilled dudes in the world playing basketball that you have to defend. And that makes things tough. But I think there are positives. I thought that he was pretty good at staying attached and getting skinny around screens and like trying to rear view contest. Now, when he got hit by a screen, he got demolished. And maybe you blame that on like the big not calling out the screen early enough or whatever. But when he did, he was able to slither over. I thought he did a good job chasing off ball actions around screen. I thought, he did a pretty decent job, like, digging and recovering. I don't think he offers any low man weak side rim protection or anything like that. But like you said, for like one of these guys who you can say as an offensive floor is that he's like a shooting sniper specialist, he's not somebody I think that you just got to be like, he's got absolutely no shot to survive defensively. I think, because of his passion, his fire, his fight, and his skills, I think he's got some stuff to work with there. And it's going to be interesting this year, hopefully with more minutes, to see like if he can sustain that same kind of passion.
Yeah, no, Corey, absolutely. I think the role, the minutes, the context is going to be really, really important for him. And I agree. Like, and also, I'm wondering what this looks like when he's eventually like in his prime. Like, what does he look like physically? How much?
It's going to be a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. But it could be possible, right? Like Brandon Ingram, he's really bulked up in his time in the NBA.
Totally.
Right. Guys like Imani Bates they've added mass, I think it's possible. I just want to see what that looks like, because as we both mentioned, and it's funny, our listeners might think that we share notes or something. We don't. We just happen to, I think, Corey, we just happen to see the game of basketball similar in certain ways.
When you talk with the same person every week for years on end, you guys, that's what happens.
That too. But the competitive spirit is real. You can feel it. I think in person, you could feel it off the screen. And overall, when you combine his offensive ceiling, also floor, with what he can do right now, plus his defensive ability, there are definitely going to be some guys in terms of comparisons that are going to be interesting for us to talk about. And we'll get into those right after the break. As you guys know, we're in week 7 of the NFL season, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. That's right. If you put down a $5 bet and it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use all over. And the thing, like I told you guys last week, right? The Giants line I felt like was kind of not the best. I felt like it was a little skewed too much to the Eagles' favor. I've got another one for you guys. You guys might hate me for this, might disagree, but just trust me because I was right last week. I might be wrong this week. Who cares? Right now, the Cleveland Browns are favored by -3 at home against the Miami Dolphins. And I just want to throw this in there. I watched that Dolphins game where they played the Chargers. I watched the whole game. And I actually thought the Dolphins were really, really scrappy. Devon Achane, the way that they've got him rolling now, he had a great game last week. The way that they've developed that connection between Tua and Darren Waller, Jalen Waddle. I know he had a fumble, but overall he's been looking better this season compared to last. I think there's a scrappiness to the Dolphins, and it feels like they really want to win for Mike McDaniels that I think is really interesting. And so take that with a grain of salt. If I'm wrong, whatever, I'm wrong. I'm not the NFL guy, but I think is an interesting one because Cleveland, they've really been struggling, and to be 3-point favorites at home, I think feels like too much for my taste. But at the end of the day, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Corey, we're gonna fly through some comps. I've got some interesting ones. I actually don't have a 90s comp this time because I think his game and his frame and length and all that stuff is really weird. So I didn't think of one. But
Yeah.
Corey, if you can, give us some of your comps for Isaiah Evans.
All right. So first guy I thought of, another kind of like skinny, kind of really devastating shooter in college who could fill it up in a hurry. It was Malik Monk. I think Isaiah Evans is a little taller than Malik Monk, and probably not as explosive, although, he's got some bounce to him. But I think that their offensive roles can look pretty similar, at least early in their career. Because, Malik Monk, he was not a big time playmaker in college. He was like 2.3 assists to 2.1 turnover, something like that. He's grown as a player, as an NBA player, he's been a guy who's done a lot more creating for others in the NBA. But it took, 7-8 years, whatever it's been since he got drafted. That was kind of like the first guy I thought of. Maybe it was like the aesthetics of their bodies or whatever. Next guy, Jordan Hawkins. Just because, incredible movement shooter, guy who doesn't need the ball in his hands to make an impact. Maybe doesn't necessarily do a whole lot outside of that. Had a big sophomore year, right, as a returner. So maybe he's has a Jordan Hawkins kind of rise based on his shooting this year. Maybe an Isaiah Joe, a Tim Hardaway Jr. potentially. So it's guys like that.
I just laughed when you said Malik Monk because I had that first guy I have on my list as well. It makes a lot of sense, right? The type of scorer shooter that he was. I have two other ones that are different from yours, but I think it's kind of the same ilk. The first guy is kind of his ceiling for me. I think if he could become this guy, it would be fantastic. I think he would have to improve with the on-ball stuff. And Isaiah's not as athletic as this guy, but role-wise, I think it makes sense with what he did for the 2013 Knicks. I'm talking about J.R. Smith. Was one option. There is a confidence, there is an audacity that both guys have as offensive players that I think makes a lot of sense. We mentioned Malik Monk already. Another guy that I put as like a low end comp, and people might hear this and be like, whatever. But I put Alec Burks, Corey. If you look at Alec Burks and how he's functioned in the NBA as a floor spacer, but a guy who can also handle the ball for you a little bit. There have been situations where they asked him to play point guard for certain teams, like the Knicks. He was kind of the backup point guard for a little while. Wasn't the best experiment.
Shout out to CP the franchise.
Right. But Corey, a guy who's been a very solid pro wherever he's gone. Teams always like him. He never causes any problems. Just a very solid outside shooter, offensive player. And so he was like my lowest end comp in terms of Alec Burks. But I thought of, hey, maybe J.R. Smith can work out. That could be interesting.
Yeah, J.R. Swish. I mean, filled it up in a hurry, right? And like was really valuable to a lot of winning teams despite his, journey as a professional, just super talented.
NBA champion.
An incredible golfer. as
Incredible
well.
golfer. Yep. College golfer after the
Yes.
fact. But Corey, I think these comps speak to how we feel about Isaiah Evans. I think we think of him as a guy who could have a real NBA career based off of his shooting alone. And to see him kind of grow in those other tools and skill sets, I think is really going to kind of define what his ceiling looks like. But as always, guys, we want to thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to have another great week next week with tons of great content for you guys. Thank you as always. My name's Albert. He's Corey. Talk to you guys soon.